2024 has arrived and I want to start it off by talking about my Zwift racing activities of the last 2 months. I've been competing in this thing called the Vertislow 4 Endurance Zwift League. In my first video about this competition, I went from rage quitting my first race to finishing a nearly 3-hour long mountain race. But in that race, I finished last. So in the next video, my aim was to not finish last. My strategy was dropping before I reached my absolute limit so that I could keep the riders that dropped before me behind me. And fortunately, I succeeded, because I finished third last. Despite the improvement, you could say I wasn't very competitive in these races. But there's a reason for that. In a standard category D Zwift race, only riders up to 2.5 watts per kilo can compete. But in the Vertislow races, the upper limit is 2.9 watts per kilo, so I'm riding against better riders. That's why these races have been a lot harder than my usual Zwift races. But anyway, this brings me to December, the Vertislow 4 Endurance Holiday League. This time I want to feel like I'm actually competing in the race. I want to ride my best Vertislow race so far. Let's go! After a strong start, I was safely in Group 1, while plenty of others had already dropped. A few times I was on the brink of getting dropped, but I kept fighting back. That was close. But eventually, my leg snapped. I dropped from Group 1 in 23rd position. For the next 5 kilometers, I was in a group of 3 between Group 1 and Group 2. My legs are dying. But I couldn't hold the tempo and dropped to Group 2. We've now reached the halfway point of the race and I'm still in that second group, but a climb is coming, so it's not looking very good for me. Somehow I managed to get dropped before the climb even started, and at the foot of the climb I was about 15 seconds behind. At this point I could have easily given up, but I kept going because I wanted to try and see if I could catch a rider. And somehow I managed to do that, but the danger came from behind. Group 3 was closing in on me.
Fuck. Oh, I made it over the top of this group. Yes.
Is what I thought, because apparently this was only the halfway point of the climb. So yeah, I got dropped again. But the race wasn't over. Eventually someone named KICKR joined me, and combining the forces of them pulling and me sitting in their wheel, we ended up getting closer and closer to the rider ahead. And we ended up not only catching one rider, but 2 riders in the process. Long story short, 1 rider in the group got dropped, so it's a 3-up sprint for 38th position at the finish line. Now it was important for me to take the right wheel, so I decided to take the wheel of KICKR.
Damn it. I thought the other guy was better, the KICKR guy.
Firstly, quick correction, KICKR is not actually a guy, but that aside, I'm actually quite happy with this race. At the start, I held on to Group 1 for quite a while, and when I dropped, I tried to follow the dropped riders with me. When I dropped from them, I tried to follow Group 2, and that kept going. Every group that I dropped towards, I kept pushing to hold on, and this makes it a race where I never really had a moment where I was giving up or resting. It was just trying to do my best the entire race through, from start to finish. So yeah, I felt like I was competing in this race, and results-wise, better than third last. Now this Sunday, the next round of the Vertislow 4 Endurance Zwift League starts, so if you want to compete together with me, then check it out. From January 21st to February 25th, every Sunday for 6 weeks. You can choose between 2 time slots, 10:45 AM and 6 PM CET times, that is. Personally, I feel like I've gotten a lot out of competing in this tournament, both physically when it comes to my level, I've improved, but also mentally. Because the races are this long, I am able to suffer more. So yeah, check out the link in the description and join the Vertislow 4 Endurance Zwift League this Sunday. Now, I can already hear some of you typing, Benji, why are you racing Zwift races? Why are you not riding Zone 2 every single day? But while that's not incorrect, it's not really ideal advice for me. Firstly, if 80% of my rides were endurance rides, then I wouldn't have the content I have on this channel, because I gotta think about trying to get content that is not just me riding a Zone 2 ride, for example. So I try to find a balance between doing endurance rides for about 50% of the time and then 50% things that are in function of a video that I'm creating. Honestly, another factor that impacts my endurance rides is that indoor I find it much harder to go across the 1 hour 30-minute barrier, and do longer rides than that. And I live in the UK, so it's not like I enjoy riding outdoors here too much, because one, driver culture is pretty horrible here. It's actually scary to go cycling outside in my neighborhood. In addition to that, whenever I do go outside of the UK to like Spain and so forth, I do the outdoor rides much longer, 2.5 hours, 3 hours. So it's like the environment that I'm in doesn't really breed endurance riding for me. But I think a super important factor that a lot of people seemingly ignore is that I'm relatively early stage when it comes to my cycling journey, and that makes it that if I would do 80% endurance rides, I would simply not be motivated to go on my bike every single day. So I need the variation to switch from endurance to a fun Zwift challenge to doing a climbing challenge to doing something else to back to an endurance ride. Otherwise, I would simply become demotivated to ride my bike, and for someone at my fitness level, the more time I spend on my bike, that's what matters, regardless of the zones that I ride in, regardless of whether it's a Zwift race or an endurance ride. It's all about just getting the kilometers in and getting the time on the bike in, and that's when I will see progress. And if I have to follow a very structured training plan at this point in my journey, I just won't enjoy it as much, I won't stay consistent, I won't ride my bike as much, and I won't have as much progress as if I would just have fun and ride a lot more. Anyway, sorry for the long rant, but I had to get that off my chest. Now, having completed my Vertislow goal in this video, I started 2024 with a fun challenge, riding the same Zwift race every day for 4 days. 19.7 kilometers completely flat on the Tempest Fugit course, my favorite course on Zwift. The first race had a really fast start. 1 kilometer in, the peloton was already splitting apart. I was still in group 1, but I was at my limit, holding on for dear life.
Oh, fuck.
And when the first uphill drag came along, I perished. Day 1, not a success, but I tried my best even though I didn't feel that good on the bike that day. But hey, the next day, I tried again.
3, 2, 1, let's go.
This time, I tried to be a little less aggressive during the start. I gambled on others closing down attackers for me, and I tried to make others close even the tiniest gaps.
The uphill drag is coming. I gotta try and move up a bit.
This time, I easily stayed with the group. But to hold on for the next 10 kilometers, I had to go very deep mentally.
Gotta keep going.
I dropped from the peloton with only 2 kilometers left and finished 29.
What a race, man. Ah, I thought I could make the sprint there, but just before the sprint I dropped. It's actually really sad.
That was much better. I rode more conservatively and it paid off in the end. And I finished comfortably in the top half, but I want more. So the next day I tried again. I once again survived the hill, but just like the day before, I perished with 2 kilometers left. Basically a copy-paste of the day before. At this point I feel like I've hit my limit of what I can achieve with my current form, but I want to try one last time on day 4. Once again, the race started fairly similar. A fast but conservative start. Again surviving the uphill drag. Just like every race this week, I was suffering the entire way through, nearly dropping multiple times. But honestly, at the halfway point, I felt really good, better than the days before. And that brings me to the final few kilometers.
hardest thing I've done in a long time. But I held on longer, so I'm happy about that one. That last kilometer was absolutely brutal, and the thing is, like, I was hoping people would just wait until 200 meters to go, but obviously they won't. They'll just sprint with a kilometer left and see how long they can make it, and I can't do that for a kilometer. I was perishing, and hey, better performance than last time. We're moving forward.
It took me 4 days, but this time I made it to the final kilometer, finishing 29th of 147 people. In the past, I've won Zwift races before, but those had Mickey Mouse start lists. For example, 5 riders at the start, 3 riders at the start. It's not overly difficult to beat 4 riders, but beating 100, 200 people, that's where it gets competitive. I've said it before, but in 2024, I want to win a competitive Zwift race, and that's what I mean with that. In terms of tactics, due to the lack of team-based racing, each rider thinks individually, which means that they sometimes start sprinting with a kilometer to go, for example, in the race we just rode. And that is because they realize, well, there's no teammates to chase me behind in the peloton if I attack. That actually made it harder for me, who's already at his limit with a kilometer to go. So if the sprint would actually be 200 meters to go, I would make it to the sprint. But with these strategies, I just don't. So yeah, there's still a notable gap between the form I currently have and the one I would need to actually be competitive in these sprints to make it to the sprint and possibly have a good result in them. But that's okay, it's 2 to 3% in terms of watts. I need to just focus on my training, stay consistent, it's all part of the process, and eventually I'll get there. And I can't wait for the day that I can actually sprint for a potential victory in one of these races. Anyway, thanks for watching today's video, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.